In this video, we are going to be looking at this Hobbywing. This is the XR10 Pro G2S 160 amp 10th scale ESC. We're going to be comparing it to the Hobbywing XR10 stock spec that I've been using in my drift cars for years and years. Which one of these really is the better buy? I'm going to get this one out, install it. We're going to test them both, look at the specs, features, and prices, and see which one is probably the better overall long-term purchase. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Troy and this is Roadside RC. One of my passions is helping people get started into RC drifting. One of the big deals that we always ask about is which ESC should I be choosing. I've done multiple videos on this over time. I'll leave a link to some of those down in the video description, but for this today, this Hobbywing, this is the XR10 Pro, 160 amp, super powerful ESC, lots of tuning choices. How good is it really? When comparing these two ESCs, of course, one of the first things that you look at is the price. The stock spec, as I look at it right here today, $125. And the Pro version, reason why I've never bought it before, $100 extra dollars. Instead of $125, $225. So you're paying a lot more for this ESC. What are you getting for it? First thing up is the amperage itself. This is the stock spec is a 80 amp continuous ESC. The Pro 160. So for that extra $100, you are getting a drastic amount more amperage and power. For a drift car, do you really need it? Hard surface, usually hard plastic tires. Don't know if that's really worth it at the end of the day. The main benefit that I'm getting is, if you notice, I've actually converted my Redcat RDS to a rear motor setup. Because of how the gearbox and everything is designed, it means the motor needs to spin in the reverse direction, and there is no ability to do that censored with turbo and boost with the stock spec ESC. This XR10 Pro actually does have all of the features necessary in order to run the motor counterclockwise and be able to do it censored with turbo and boost. So that's why I went ahead and spent the extra $100. When you look at the programmable items that come with the ESC, what you'll find is it's about the same actually. There's a few more settings in here than come with the stock spec, but the truth is I don't use a lot of it, if I'm honest. I hit turbo, I hit boost, maybe adjust the drag brake depending on how I do want it or don't want it for the car that how I'm setting it up. But I also, that's pretty much it. Yeah, that's about it. So I actually don't use a lot of these other settings, so I'm not going to find them value added. One cool thing to note is it does come with 9 preset modes, one of which is drift on carpet. So I might test that out and see how that does, what all it sets as far as a stock setting with that in there. Now many of you may immediately ask, whoa Troy, wait, Hobbywing makes a drift specific ESC. It's the XD10 instead of the XR10. Why didn't I get that one instead? They're $5 difference in price. So basically they're the exact same price. The XR10 Pro actually comes with significantly more power. Again, this is a 160 amp ESC, whereas the XD10 is 100. Do I need that extra power? Not really, but I'd rather have it than not have it, I guess, at the end of the day, especially when paying the same price. The other piece of it is the XD10, it's actually heavier. So if you follow the channel, you'll know I'm a big proponent of lightweight components in my drift car. I was already sad because the XR10 Pro is heavier than the XR10 stock spec. So I might as well just go ahead and get this one. It'll be more versatile for me in the long run. I don't actually know why folks buy the XD10 unless it's really just about the $5 and maybe it looks a little bit fancier. So I don't know. Hey, if you have tested both of those back to back and you know better than I do, leave a note down in the comments so everybody else can learn from you. But the first step now that we're going to do is we're going to actually get my Gens Ace battery in here. We're going to get the car all fired up and we're going to do one last test drive with it as it is before we swap over to the new ESC and be able to do a head-to-head comparison that way. Clearly the car has a little bit of down on power, and it's hindered a little bit for total maneuverability without that turbo and boost to help it really kick in tight corners or at the end of a long sweeper. So the next steps are to take this ESC out. I'm going to get the soldering iron on. We're going to solder on some bullets on here, cut the wires all the right length, get everything installed. We are all wired up. We should be ready to fire it up for the first time and do the initial programming. I do want to point out something just in case you are interested in running bullets like I do. One of the things I typically do is I always put my battery in from the same side, right? I just make it a habit that I always put it in here. ESC power button is facing me. What I do is I actually solder the connectors on in such a way that you physically can't actually plug the battery in backwards. So the positive terminal here will only ever reach this side of the battery. It won't physically reach over here. Just a tip that I have found over time. I've spent a little time now tweaking the ESC settings in it to get it to how I want this car to drive. If you're interested in my ESC settings, there'll be a whole separate video coming out where I'm messing with this ESC with the Hobbywing Wi-Fi programmer. So be on the lookout for that, and you'll be able to see my full setup in this drift car. What I'm going to show you now is the difference in how this car drives now versus what you saw earlier with the XR10 stock spec in it. All right, back from the test drive, and that ESC's nice. I really like it. I really appreciate the just staggering power output that it has. What you see with me driving it is mostly this ESC's stock drift tune with just some tweaks to the braking, honestly. And of course, reversing the motor rotation for how I have it here in the Red Cat RDS, but for most of you, you would never have to do that. So it's almost the stock tune, just a few little tweaks to it. Power output is so much better than what I had with the XR10 stock spec. Of course, some of that is because I can now run it in censored mode, because I can actually reverse the ESC programming in that censored mode. I get all my turbo and boost back, and man, it has enough power. You can really see, I hope it came across on camera, but you can really see when you get on power, the rear end squat, front end lift up. I mean, it does well, and that's all weight transfer in order to gain traction as you come out of the corner. So that's pretty good. I'm liking it a lot. But final thoughts for most people out there: is it worth spending the extra $100 for the XD10 or this XR10 Pro? And I don't think it is. I really don't think it is. I think for the folks that want to be the utmost in competition and they want to have the best of the best, yeah, maybe you spend the extra $100 and just know that you have all that power if you need it. But honestly, for two things. One, the XR10 stock spec weighs less, smaller footprint, better in that way. The 80 amp is going to be everything you need, and it has, except for being able to reverse the rotation of the motor, has all of the programming features that you're going to need. So save yourself $100 and put that towards a better gyro or some carbon fiber parts or something like that, better shocks. It's a pretty smart move for almost like 90-95% of people. If you really are at the peak pinnacle and you really want the best that you can possibly get for your drift car, maybe you spend the $100. But I'll be honest, I think for most people, most situations, even in a competition, the stock Spec's probably still the better choice because of the lighter weight and the fact that, honestly, some people get in trouble. The more power they have, the more trouble they get into. You know, sometimes the success with drifting isn't more wheel speed, it's less. So maybe that's really kind of the key takeaway here, is maybe most people can save themselves the $100 and get the cheaper ESC. So I hope this was helpful for you. If you are curious about any of the other drift stuff that I have going on, I have a Drift Tech playlist that'll be popping up to your right. And I talked about some other drift videos that I've already previously put together. If you're looking for those will be down below in the video description. Thank you, and we will see you in those videos. Goodbye.